Hulk Hogan is basically the perfect Space Marine. He walks around saying brother a lot.
Brother, brother's brother, brother.
He's a little bit racist and xenophobic. And let's be honest, he's been known to be a little bit on the fash side as well.
Let Trumpamania run wild, brother!
So today I'm going to paint up a Space Marine in the style of Hulk Hogan, so you can have this perfect, superhuman, 38-inch pythoned man fighting for the Imperium in your games of Warhammer 40,000. So the first thing I've done is I've primed the model white, as this will give us a nice bright, smooth base coat for the rest of our colours to work from. And the first colour I'm coming in with is some Avalan Sunset, and I'm going to paint this all over the power armour to the Space Marine. So I'm going to work in a couple of smooth layers, slowly building up the Avalan Sunset until I get a nice solid, even base coat all over the power armour to this Space Marine. Yellow doesn't give fantastic coverage, so it is going to take a few layers to build up, but by keeping your layers nice and thin, slowly applying each layer, you'll get a nice smooth, even coat in just a few layers. So you can see here the pose I've put this Space Marine in is a little bit odd, but it's the closest imitation I could get out of the box of that famous Hulk Hogan, bringing the arm up to his ear, hyping up the crowd during his matches. As I said in the introduction, Hulk Hogan is a perfect character to be inspired for your Space Marines from. He's basically superhuman, famously hulks up, taking no damage during matches. So I think it's going to be nice and fun to paint up a Space Marine in his style. So you can see here, I'm just getting all of the Space Marine with the Avalan Sunset. I'm going to build it up over a few layers until I get that solid coat all over the power armour. And after a few layers of Avalan Sunset, you can see I've got a nice smooth, even base coat all over that power armour. So next thing I'm going to paint is the undersuit. And for this, I'm using some Corvus Black. And I'm just going to pick out all of the ribbed parts to the undersuit. Obviously, I'm being really careful around the yellow to the power armour. Don't want to accidentally get some Corvus Black over the yellow if I can help it. So I'm just being really careful, just catching all of the areas of exposed undersuit with a layer of Corvus Black. While I was picking out these black details, I did realise how cool would it be if I painted a Space Marine in the NWO Hollywood Hulk Hogan style. I think that black and white colour scheme could look really good on a Space Marine. So let me know in the comments down below if you'd like to see me paint a black and white Hulk Hogan inspired Space Marine. You see with this model there are quite a few areas exposed undersuit, so now I'm just picking out this part here on his hand, just carefully applying a couple of layers Corvus Black until I get a nice solid base coat. And with that Corvus Black applied, I've picked out all of the areas of exposed undersuit. So the next thing I'm going to paint is the final base coat, and it's all of the details, which I'm going to be painting with Mephiston Red. So for these, I'm going to pick out all of the things here, like the Aquila on his chest. You'll know the famous Hulk Hogan colour scheme is yellow and red. So I'm going to leave all the power armour yellow, but pick out all of the details with some Mephiston Red. So I'm going to carefully apply a layer of Mephiston Red all over the Aquila on his chest. If I'd been really fancy, I could have scraped this off, tried to paint on Hulkamania over his chest. I'm going to keep in the theme of a Space Marine here. So as well as the Aquila, I'm also going to pick out the shoulder pad trim. I'm just going to carefully apply some Mephiston Red all around the edges to the shoulder pad. If I do make any mistakes and accidentally get this over the yellow, I'll tidy it up afterwards. But I'm trying to be nice and neat to not accidentally paint areas I don't want to be red. So at this stage here, I can't quite think what I'm going to paint into the shoulder pads here. I was thinking maybe the WWF logo or something like that. But if you can think of something, let me know in the comments down below. As well as the shoulder pads, I'm going to pick out his belt here, just to break up that yellow a bit. And a nice band of red going around the middle of the model. So I'm just carefully applying a couple of layers of Mephiston red to the belt. I'm also going to paint these straps here on his back. I'm basically picking out any details I can find that aren't the undersuit, and I'm going to paint them with some Mephiston red. As there's only really the two colours and the black on this model, I'm going to use the red to add as much interest as possible to this Space Marine. At this stage I'm also picking out this raised part here on his helmet. Hulk Hogan often wore bandana around the top of his head, so this is the best way I can copy that. And at this stage I'm also painting all of the metallic parts, so it's going to be the vents on his backpack because this one's not holding a weapon. So I'm going to pick out these vents at the bottom, as well as the ones at the top, with a couple of layers of Mephiston red. Be nice and careful around the yellow, just catch all of these details with some Mephiston red. And with the red applied, you can see it really has given us that Hulk Hogan look to this Space Marine. So the next step is going to be to shade the miniature. So first of all I'm coming in with Agrak's Earthshade, and I'm going to shade all of the armour. So I'm applying this carefully as a pin shade into all of the recesses to the power armour. Trying not to accidentally overspill this onto the smooth flat areas. If I do, I will tidy it back up afterwards. I'm just carefully sinking a little bit of Agrak's Earthshade into all of the recesses of the power armour on the Space Marine. So whether there's a line, edge of a detail, anything like that, you just apply a thin line of Agrak's Earthshade into those recesses. This step can take a while, but with such a simple colour scheme, it really is worth taking the time to make sure we add all of that definition that we can to the model. So as you can see, I'm working my way around the model, just applying small spots of this Agrak's Earthshade into all of those recesses. Then find the lowest level and add that definition all the way around our Space Marine. I'm going to make sure I also catch all of the details on the helmet as well. This is going to be the focal point of the model, so you really want to make sure you catch all of these areas and add that definition all over the helmet. And I'm doing the backpack as well at the same time. I'm just going to make sure I catch all of these recesses with a really thin pin shade of Agrak's Earthshade. Now with the Agrak's Earthshade, I'm going to apply an all-over shade to details like the Aquila, being careful not to accidentally get it over the yellow. I'm just going to make sure I apply this shade to the Aquila and all the other regions we painted with Mephiston red, just catching these with an all-over shade of Agrak's Earthshade. And with some known oil, I'm going to apply an all-over shade to the areas we paint with Corvus Black. So all of the details of the undersuit, I'm just carefully catching these with a shade of known oil. I'm being careful that I don't accidentally get this over the power armour. I'm just catching the Corvus Black with the shade of known oil.
If you're enjoying the video, please press like. If you want more videos, press the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. If you would like to support the channel and become a member, please press the join button down below.
And after those shades have dried, you can see they've really added definition all over the power armour to this Space Marine. So it's time to start highlighting. The first highlight I'm going to come in with is some Flash Gits yellow. I'm going to use this to highlight the power armour. So with this, I'm applying an edge highlight all over the power armour. So I'm going to catch the edge of every raised detail, every panel, everything like that I'm going to catch with a thin edge highlight, flash gets yellow. I want to keep these lines nice and thin, just catching the very edge with a nice smooth even edge highlight. This will pick out all of these details, really work well with the shade, and add some great contrast and definition to the model. So I'm just working my way back around the model, carefully applying a really thin edge highlight of flash gets yellow to the edges of all of the panels to the power armor. If at any point you do come in a little bit too thick with any of these edge highlights, you can tidy them back up with some Avalanche Sunset again. But try and keep these nice and thin, keep some control of your brush and your paint, and just catch all of the raised details with a thin edge highlight of flash gets yellow. So much like when applying the pin shade, this step will take a while, but as so much of this model is the power armor, it really is worth taking the time to make sure you catch every panel with this edge highlight. So just take your time, work your way around the model, and carefully apply thin edge highlight, flash gets yellow, to the edges of all of the details to Hulk Hogan's power armor. As you can see, there really are a lot of details to pick out, but it really is worth taking the time to make sure you catch all of these details. Really does create a great looking Space Marine once all of the panels have been edge highlighted. And it's also really good practice for your brush control, as you learn how to apply even pressure to get nice, smooth, even lines as you're working your way around your models. Don't forget to also apply these highlights to the backpack as well. We're catching everything that we painted with Avalanche Sunset with this thin edge highlight of flash gets yellow. And after that edge highlight, flash gets yellow has been applied, you can see how it's really made the edges of all of those panels stand out. But now I'm going to come in with a spot highlight and really add some definition to these panels. So I'm coming in with some Dawn Yellow now. I'm going to carefully pick out some of the sharpest points and areas that the light would catch the most, and just applying a really thin highlight of Dawn Yellow within the flash gets yellow we just applied. So for this here, you can see I'm just picking the sharp edges of some of the panels and just applying a really small highlight of Dawn Yellow within the flash gets yellow to really give the impression of light catching on those sharper points. So you can do as many of these or as few of these as you would like. I sometimes find less is more with these kind of highlights. So just pick some of the sharpest points and apply a small spot highlight of Dawn Yellow to the sharpest points in the power armor. And with that spot highlight applied, it's really brought some life to that yellow power armor. So the next step is I'm going to paint the eyes to the miniature. For this, I'm coming in with Mephiston Red first. And I'm going to carefully sink this into the recesses of the eye lenses on the Space Marine. Again, this is going to add another little pop of red to the Space Marine, really giving it that Hulk Hogan look. I'm just carefully sinking some Mephiston Red into the recesses for those eye lenses. Now with a bit of Wild Rider Red, I'm going to carefully paint a really small line just at the very bottom of those eye lenses. So I'm just applying a small line right at the very bottom of those eye lenses, just to brighten them up a little bit. And finally, with some white scar, I'm just going to add a very small spot of white scar into the back corner of the eyes. It's just going to give the impression of light reflecting at the back of the eyes So I'm just applying a really small spot in the very back corner of each of the eye lenses. With the eyes painted, that's really added some life and character to the Space Marine. So the next thing I'm going to highlight is all of the black undersuit. For this I'll be using Mechanica Standard Grey. And I'm just going to carefully pick out the tops of all of the ridges to the undersuit. So don't need to make these lines too thick, just carefully picking out the most raised points, highest details of those ridges with a really thin edge highlight of Mechanica Standard Grey. While we applied the Nuln Oil shade all over, this will work with that shade and really add some definition and create some interest to the otherwise quite flat and black areas. I'm just using the very tip of my brush here and just carefully picking out the tops of all of those raised ridges with a really thin edge highlight of Mechanica Standard Grey. And with that Mechanica Standard Grey applied, as all of the undersuit highlighted, there's actually only one more thing left to highlight on this miniature, and that's going to be all of the red details. So for this, I'm coming with Evil Sun Scarlet first, and I'm going to apply an edge highlight to all of the areas we paint with Mephiston Red. So for the belt here, I'm catching the top and the bottom with an edge highlight of Evil Sun Scarlet, doing the same to all the ridges on these strappings on the back. Just make sure I catch the top of all of those with some Evil Sun Scarlet. On the Aquila here, I'm picking out all of the raised details. As parts where the shade hasn't settled. So it's areas like the top of the skull. And all of the feathers to the Aquila here. Just catching the tops of the raised parts with some Evil Sun Scarlet. Making sure I leave the Mephiston Red and the shaded areas showing as well. And for the shoulder pads here, where it's a nice sharp point, I can use the side of my brush to get a nice even edge highlight all the way along the edge of that shoulder pad trim. It's always nice where you can use the side of your brush to get a nice straight line. I'm also catching the top of the part I painted on the top of his head, catching this with the edge highlight of Evil Sun Scarlet as well. And finally I'm going to catch the edges of all of the parts on the backpack. So all of the vents, I'm just catching these with an edge highlight of Evil Sun Scarlet. And with the Evil Sun Scarlet applied, that's all the red details highlighted. I'm going to come back in and apply another highlight within these areas. So for this I'm using Wild Rider Red. I'm going to very carefully apply an edge highlight within all the areas we just applied the Evil Sun Scarlet. So for the belt here you can see I'm just catching the very edge with a thin edge highlight of Wild Rider Red, making sure I leave a bit of that Evil Sun Scarlet showing. Doing the same to the strapping on the back, focusing this into the middle of those straps, leaving the Evil Sun Scarlet showing at the sides. And on the Aquila I'm applying this like a spot highlight, so I'm just catching the sharpest points, the very tips of all of the feathers, just catching these with a really small spot highlight of Wild Rider Red. And doing the same for the shoulder pads, so I'm carefully just applying an even thinner edge highlight within the Evil Sun Scarlet we just applied. Same with the top to his helmet as well, making sure I leave a little bit of that Evil Sun Scarlet showing through. And for the vents on the backpack, I'm just catching the sharpest points with a spot highlight of Wild Rider Red. And with that Wild Rider Red applied, that is a Space Marine painted up in the style of Hulk Hogan. So please let me know in the comments down below, are there any other wrestlers you would like to see me paint a model inspired by? But thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, an extra special thank you to Jenkins, our Tea Lover channel member, Thank you so much for the support, and happy painting!